being at the helm of it all while you guys have gotten arrests and made some real headway on two major cases. Just what's that like for you to be a part of?
I'm the luckiest guy on the planet to be able to represent the people that are doing that work. And I preach in the highest mountains about that all the time. So it's good. It's good for the families. It's good for the communities. It's good for those that knew these victims. And I couldn't be more proud of them.
Proud just on every level, I'd imagine. And I would imagine, if you could just kind of shed some light on that, it takes people at every level to make arrests on cases as big as these.
It does. And these people, in large part, live quietly. They live in the space in a laboratory. They live in a space where an analyst does their work. They live in a squadron. They live in a detective's area where they sit and talk and strategize. It lives with the commanders to support the efforts on the ground. And every discipline within the ISP has been used in both of these cases. And I'm just very proud of them.
Every discipline, if you could explain, what do you mean?
Well, the state police the Indiana State Police is a full-service law enforcement agency, so we're not a highway patrol, we're not a state patrol, and a lot of the rural agencies in Indiana, which are about half of our counties, really rely on us because they just simply don't have the capacity to do the things that we can do, whether that be from laboratory science, fingerprinting, DNA, firearms, drug analysis, whatever it might be, to our analysts, our criminal analysts that have the ability to understand how to access information about people and then how to connect those dots. It's fascinating. Our tech unit with computers and phones, almost every crime has a connection to some type of a device. Special operations, SWAT aviation, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And these cases that have drug on like this, every one of them have been touched by every single facet of the ISP.
That's fascinating. How much does it change things, if at all? Delphi and Washington County, two rural places.
Yeah.
And I don't know, how good access is over there. So how does it change things, if at all, being in the rural parts of Indiana?
That's kind of how we built our foundation, is to support those agencies that just simply can't have the technology and resources and equipment and training and people and all those things. I can get 150 troopers anywhere in Indiana in about an hour and a half. And that's by design. So we have a hard time with staffing like everybody else. But I will say I don't think there's any agency better when times are hard or bad than us, simply because of what our capabilities are. So the rural Indiana component is very, very important. And we work tirelessly to make sure that we have access with technology, people, relationships in those rural areas on any given day.
Kat, that was something Captain Galvez and I were talking about. He said that you guys have things, maybe some lab work, maybe new technology that you guys have been using that have really made a difference lately. If you could just tell us, what are some of those?
Well, at least anecdotally, one of the examples would be DNA technology. I remember a time in the late 1980s, mid to late 1980s, I'm dating myself, where DNA technology was fascinating. On a Coke can. You mean you can tell me if somebody grabs that Coke can and then they leave and you find that Coke can and you can connect DNA from that person to that Coke can? I was fascinated by that.
Sure.
Now they're doing DNA on things the human eye can't even see. So it's really come a long, 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 long way. The problem with it coming a long way so quickly over the last 3 decades or so is that there's unreasonable expectations about how fast we can solve crimes. Because on TV, it's 40 minutes and it starts really bad and it ends really good every single time. That's not necessarily the case in real life.
Yeah, 40 minutes could really mean 6 months. It could mean 5 years. It could mean several decades.
Good.
It's just, that is one of the things I wanted to ask you too, and we were talking about this on the way up here, is just that, like, a lot of people don't understand what all goes into making an arrest in some of these big cases. And what is it like for you guys, and maybe you guys are used to it more than the general public, of knowing, hey, this could be 6 months out. Hey, this could be 6 years out. So what are those, how do you set expectations going into an investigation?
Well, I don't know, because I've never been a detective, and I'm not going to pretend to understand what goes through their minds. But what I do get to talk about is what I see them do, whether it's a 24-hour all-nighter 48 hours, never go home, 72 hours, so tired you can't hardly walk.
And those are possibilities.
Oh, this happens all the time. They happen. They happen all the time. So they're as focused in 6 months as they were on day one. 2,086 days from the time Libby and Abby were killed to the time we stood in the same place and talked about the arrest. And I've been asked many times, what did you do to continue to encourage and to keep the wind under those detectives' sails? I said, nothing. They did it to me. They never wavered. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy, but I guess that's how you get results at the end of the day.
For sure, no doubt. Washington County is the exact same thing. With Matt Busick and the guys and gals down there from the laboratory. Laboratory played a huge part in that case. And the commitment from everybody down there, and it didn't matter what the discipline was. And I'm not going to pretend like we live in this panacea and everybody loves each other all the time.
Right.
Because we fuss with each other like brothers and sisters within the ISP. But when things are bad for our citizens or in a community, there's nobody better.
How did the lab play such a big role in the Washington County stuff?
That'll come out over time.
Okay.
But I think you'll be amazed.
I'm sure I will. I was fascinated by that case from the very, very
so was
beginning.
The country, literally the world. Yeah.
Does that change things at all when there are so many eyes on a situation?
Oh, it does. It does. And we've learned lots of lessons from what happened up in Delphi and Flora and several other high-profile cases around the state. Now Washington County, that lasted a while. People are confused. They want answers. We can't talk about what we think. We have to talk about what we know. And you should always hold us to account there. Because if we guess or we take a subjective opinion, we better hope we're right. Right? But nobody else has to do that. People on the web don't have to do that. We've had 70,000 plus tips in Delphi, and people have done investigations on their own. We've asked them not to do that, but they have. I believe that the vast majority of people are doing those for the right reasons, but it was very damaging to people. So it's easy to publicly to now talk about what you think, but we just simply can't do that, nor will we.
And that was something that Carrie said to us about the Washington County thing. It's like we've received so many tips. We've been like inundated with tips. And did any of the tips in either of those cases help you out at all?
Help.
Okay.
Yeah, tips always help us, whether on the positive side or the negative side. So we want to know what people think. There's this notion that so much can be solved with science, but what we're learning is a lot of this has to do with human intelligence. Isn't that crazy? How we kind of come full circle. But now we need both. We need both of them. So while we live in a high-tech environment, we're able to do things I never thought in a million years we could do as an agency with things, technology, people, connectivity, collecting information, and the like. There's the equal importance associated with. I think that was my dad. I think that was my brother.
And I don't think human intelligence is like front and center, in Delphi, because the arrest you make is somebody who lives in the area. We could do a nationwide search, and I'm sure y'all do. But at the end of the day, sometimes answers can be right under our nose.
That's right.
And I think maybe that speaks to the human intelligence side of things.
Very important.
With you guys, when you first found out that there was going to be an arrest made in either case, what was going through your mind at those points when you first catch wind, like, hey, we got something legit?
Yeah. It's a very humbling experience for me because I care deeply about people. I care deeply about our citizens and equally about the people that protect them. So being able to see how this all works from where I sit and to try and understand the magnitude of emotion that they must feel, it's pretty cool.
Can you tell us a little bit about when you found out and how you found out?
Yeah. I was actually in Italy.
Really?
Yeah. I finally hadn't been away in a long time, and my wife and I were in Italy, and I was notified about Washington County, so I couldn't be there. I was out of the country. I would have been standing there with those guys in a split second.
Sure.
And I just kind of walked out on their little balcony that we had and just kind of watched the sea go by. And I just thought to myself, my gosh, there's a God, There it is.
I mean, what a phone call to get when you're out finally on vacation after however many years it is. It's like, of course it came while I was
It's okay.
while I was sitting here.
As it did. I wish I could have been there to stand with them, but that's okay. That's okay. They did Carrie did a wonderful job. He's a terrific human being, and I just love him dearly.
Yeah, we love Carrie.
Yeah. And the same thing with the Delphi arrest. I got a call from the prosecuting attorney up there. Then he called me direct, and we were just arriving in Barcelona, Spain. And I just took a great big deep breath and went back outside. So
that's wild. Well, that's amazing to get it. I'm going to wait for that to.
no quit. Yeah.
I can imagine though, like, was there any bit of shock to you that you get one call on one day, and then the next day or 2 days later? Was it 2 days later?
I don't remember. It's close. No, I think it was more than that distance. I think. I don't remember exactly.
But even still, to get an update days apart on two cases that I would imagine are high up on the list.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, like what is that like?
Well, and it's not celebratory. I want to be really careful because
sure.
there are so many other victims out there whose families want the same thing, and we want to be careful. This isn't a celebratory time. I thought it would be, quite frankly, but I didn't feel that way. I was incredibly proud of the diligence and of the commitment of these guys and gals from within our agency and other agencies as well that never lost hope, right? But now they got to go through understanding why. Got to go through the families, the community has to go through the explanation. They have to go through a possible trial. There are a lot of things now they have to hit the reset button on. So I don't want to lose sight of that or of the other unsolved cases that are out there. There's a lot of them because they all matter. They're all important to us.
And at the end of the day, too, as much as we can smile and say that this is a great thing, which it is, at the end of the day, we're still talking about death. And these cases shouldn't have happened because of whatever reason or another. But and I think that's important to note that, these people waited a long time and suffered. And now it's a different, as you mentioned, a different part of the grieving process. So I can only imagine what it's like for them.
I've been doing this business for a long time, and I've seen a lot of parents deal with the loss of a child or a loss of a close loved one. And particularly loss of a child, parents exist, but they don't live anymore. And that's just the reality. That's just the reality of this very complicated life we live. And these are no different. These are no different.
What is it like?
Somebody loved that little boy.
Sure.
Somebody loved that little boy. And somebody loved those two little girls up in Delphi. So, it changes lives, no matter the outcome. It changes life.
You know what got me? And we were running an interview with the little boy's grandma in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And she had said something to the extent of, I've not seen Cairo since he was 11 months old. And we were coming up on his 6th birthday.
Right.
Just the extent of time that his family hadn't even seen him. Mm-hmm. And yet they get this notice and how broken up they all are.
Right.
That was just something for me mentally that I don't know if I was ready for.
Yeah. How can you be? Don't ever try to be. You and me and Ron, I mean, all of us deal with tragedy almost every single day. We cannot prepare ourselves for that. In other words, we're all damaged, right? We're all going to be damaged. But maybe that makes us appreciate each day. Maybe that's what we're learning through that. I don't know. I know the families have lots of regret. Why did I leave home angry? Why did I say that when he or she left? Why didn't I make that right? Why didn't I sit and have that meal or whatever
Yeah.
And it's very natural for people to do that because we just take advantage of every day and we think tomorrow's coming, but there's no guarantee about that.
Sure. And I had something as far as giving those families answers,
yeah,
what kind of feeling is that? Again, probably not celebratory, but there has got to be some sort of positive to be like, hey, we figured this out and we got you the answer that you guys have wanted and deserved all this while.
That's a really good question, and it's a hard one to answer. And I want to explain to you why. Oftentimes during these investigations, there's going to be 3 things that are going to happen. 1, we're not going to be able to explain it. 2, because we just don't know. 2, we can't tell anybody because only people that know what happened were the people that were there. And 3, be able to share the entire story. all three of them are not good solutions because it doesn't solve what they're experiencing. It brings a little bit of peace.
Sure.
It brings the word justice is thrown around today like community policing, and I just deplore it. I don't like it when it's used in that context, which is a whole nother interview maybe.
Yeah.
But we owe the same. And one of the things that's been very important to me is if we work a fatal crash involving one person in a car at 2:00 in the morning on a gravel road in rural Indiana, somebody is going to want answers to what happened to that individual. It's not easy, but it's human nature just to say he was intoxicated, she was intoxicated. Thank heaven she didn't hurt anybody else. How sad it is she hurt herself, but at least it's just her or him. Well, one thing I'm so proud of within the state police is that they know they're going to have to answer to that family. Where was she? He or she? Who were they with? How much had they been drinking? What doing drugs? Whatever that might be, we owe that to a family. And so it's no different. It's absolutely no different. We have to tell them oftentimes what they don't want to hear, even though they think they do. But we owe them the facts. And again, not what we think, but we owe them what we know. And that's really important for the grieving process. Really, really, really important.
How do you even prepare yourself for that conversation?
You don't. No one of them is the same. They're all different. Dynamics are all different with relationships, familial ties, former spouses, whatever that might be. Everybody responds differently, and that's okay. That doesn't make it wrong.
I don't know if this is a logistics question or sort of a tactics question, but the one other thing that fascinated me about the Washington County thing was how, when everything came out, you guys were able to say, okay, this boy was 5 years old. He was from this city. Mom is in this city. She was from this city. She was arrested in this city. Accomplice was arrested in this city, but she's from here. The entirety of it all just fascinated me because I didn't know how you did it. And so I'm asking, how were you able to tie up all of these national loose ends into one answer or one delivery?
Perpetual effort. Perpetual effort. And I'm not going to say that I understand it because I don't. But isn't it cool?
It's fascinating.
Amazing? Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing, and it's these guys and gals with a relentless pursuit of answers, and that rocked a community down there. It rocked Kentucky and Southern Indiana. I mean that spread around the country.
Yeah,
and I know many of them personally, and I'm glad they were there. I'm glad they did what they did at the time they did it.
Is that a lot of phone calls too? And I imagine that law enforcement works together behind the scenes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But is that just kind of phone calls back and forth that then lead to more investigative work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a complex web of technology, equipment, and people. But the common theme is effort. Underneath all of that is effort, because without that, none of it matters. But the way in which we communicate now allows us to have access to all those resources, and then have resources for us.
Sure.
So it's a really nice give and take for the pursuit of some end game to explain what happened to that family and to the community.
At any point, and I'll ask this about both cases. At any point, did it go cold? Did it go, well, we just don't have it? We need to lay.
It's interesting you bring up that. That's another word that I despise is cold. It's not cold unless the body's cold, right? And all the participants are cold. If only we had a secret's good with two people, one of them's dead, right?
Right.
So I don't believe in cold cases. We have several of them within the ISP that we give as much attention to as we can because there are still family members alive. Yeah. So I learned up in Delphi 5 years ago, one of the lead detectives, Jerry Holman, said to me one day when I asked him, what do you do when you get done with all these tips? And there's nothing else in the file. He looked at me, he said, we start over. I'll never forget it. Start all over.
So literally, just back to the beginning.
Yeah, start all over. Start all over.
I can imagine that feels like you spinning your wheels a little bit. As
I
a
would feel that
detective.
way if I was them.
Yeah.
I would feel that way, but they never felt that way. They never ever had a doubt in their mind. Never had a doubt in their mind. We'll just start over. Unbelievable.
And I was going to ask about the ebb and flow of an investigation, but I feel like that's the answer. You go through all of your hits, all of your leads, and then just hit rewind.
Start over. Don't go backwards. You go all the way to the beginning. Start over again. With a different set of eyes, different set of criteria, different technologies, different relationships. We said to that community, we're not leaving. We are not leaving here. And we stayed up there. Obviously, the sheriff's office up there was very small, but they kept a detective there the entire time. That's a big deal.
Wow.
For an agency of 12 people. The city of Delphi and hundreds of law enforcement agencies from around Indiana, literally around the country. So it was really an extraordinary experience.
How many detectives were on those cases? Was it several, dozens, 5 or 6?
So initially, there were more than 100.
Okay.
Initially, we were bringing detectives in from all over the state and putting them up in hotels in Lafayette. And yeah, it was incredible. It really was something that we as an agency have never done anything like this before.
5 years. Does it change how an investigation goes at all? Just length of time?
Yeah, well, of course, the rhythm's important. But a detective that's been in the business well understands that euphoria, that drive, that
Chris, I'm going to get milk. I hope to see you
thing
again
that they're
someday.
dealing with at that time. Could be the murder of a child, and there's all kinds of different scenarios. They know that this could drag on. We can't just do what people think or what they want us to do. We just can't do that, nor should we ever be able to do that. And that's one of the things I will always remember in both in Washington County and up in Delphi, the relentless pursuit, just the relentless pursuit. The case became them. It just became them. And it was just, gosh, I'm so proud.
Yeah. Now that you go into a different part of these investigations, right? Now this is sort of like the judicial part of it all.
It's a great way to say it.
How does, what is your level of involvement, maybe not you personally, but the detective's level of involvement as we move into that part?
Yeah. Generally speaking, once that probable cause affidavit is signed, then that changes everything for us. And we are, of course, bound by absolute process associated with due process, as we should be. So now what they're doing is very methodically doing what they've done.